go ahead and do it. Good afternoon, everybody. Today is September 26, 2023. Welcome to the Great Falls International Airport Authority Board meeting. As a reminder, the mission of Great Falls International Airport Authority is to optimize transportation services and development in our region, and the vision of the Great Falls International Airport Authority is to maximize the airport's benefit to our region. Welcome, Dwight. Thank you for participation from the public. If you have anything to say, please stand and identify yourself. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Board present, I call the meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Eretz is not here. Commissioner Gibbs. Here. Commissioner Hogan.
Present.
Commissioner Husted. Here. Commissioner Lalonde is present. Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
And Commissioner Timbo.
Here.
Perfect. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, starting with the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action but do not appear to have a significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. This month we have item A, approval of board meeting minutes for August 2023. Item B, payroll checks for August totaling $121,719.42. Item C, maintenance and operations checks number 27719 to 27783 totaling $2,257,382.02. Item D, approved passenger facility charge totaling $65,884.74 for August. And item E, financial reports for August 2023. Does any board member have any additional items they'd like to pull for discussion or comment? All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve as published.
Got a motion, any additional comments? And a second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And nay. The ayes have it. On to the director's report.
Yes, happy September, everybody. Just a couple quick notes on the financial statements. We did accrue that marketing expense back to the previous year. As I mentioned, the majority of our marketing, we typically are done by the time the fiscal year rolls around. This year we leaked over by 2 weeks, but the majority of the expense was last year, and we actually let that contract well back in March. So I did ask Shailene, and she got it accrued back to the previous fiscal year. So you'll notice this month that the marketing expenses are kind of back in line. The only other thing I was going to note on the financials, in terms of financial reserves, we're sitting right now at about $6.7 million in the bank. We still have about $1.5 million to spend on the baggage belts and the remainder of the warehouse building. But we also have about $1.5 million coming in. We should see $1 million of that in the next week or so from the FAA, depending on whether or not they got that into the system before accounting closed for the year, which was like last week.
No, they moved it till accounting close. I think right now it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
At 4:30.
A couple more days.
Yeah.
So we'll either see that here in the next week, or it'll be a month until we get accounting reset for the next year. But either way, we should be seeing that $1 million pretty soon. And then the city did approve the bond issuance of the $600,000 they still owe us for the TIF reimbursement. So we should be getting that money probably in the next 2 months. We're probably going to end the warehouse and the ticketing project with about $7 million in the bank, which is pretty terrific, because at one point we thought we were going to be down around $3 million. But with passengers picking back up over the last 18 months, and with revenue increasing, and then some of the new revenue sources coming online with parking takeover, what do we call it, self-pay, we have been able to hold our reserves. So that's really positive. It leaves us quite a bit more money to reinvest in this terminal project over the next few years, trying to spruce up some of that 50-year-old stuff we got sitting around. and get caught up and still maintain a really healthy bottom line. As most of you know, we retired debt during the pandemic, so we're debt-free, and that money we have there is really reinvestment money that we can use to kind of get caught up on a few things. So really positive on that front. Does anyone have any specific questions with the financials? We might as well do that before I move on. Nope. All right. In other news, capital program, we've got, I was remarking to Rod last week, I said, in the next 90 days, there's going to be some pretty incredible changes to the facilities with everything we've got going. The ticketing lobby, you probably saw they're beginning to pull down the dust walls now, so you can kind of see the expanse of the ticketing space back in there. United has been moved into temporary counters. Just even today, it sounds like the asbestos will be complete in their area so they can tear that out, and then they'll be rebuilding their ticketing counter. They'll be the last piece of the project as they move into their ticketing, probably around the beginning of December. Alaska will be moving into their new ticket counter next week. Their IT people are coming up. Everyone's already in their new office space, except for now, you may recall Legion is moving. An uncharacteristic move for them, they've asked for some more space. They're usually really, really tight on space, but they actually want a little bit bigger office. So our current plan is to finish the unfinished airline office behind United, and they'll move over there out of the small space they're in. So that might ultimately be the final piece of the program. But as we sit right now, the ticket counters are all pretty much complete except for United's ticket counter, and then Allegiant's new ticket counter will be over there, because if we move them to that side of the bag belt, we want their office on that side. The original plan was to move them kind of next to where United is now, and then their office was going to be over here. So a little bit of reshuffling there, but really coming together on that project. Baggage belts will be here in the middle of October, and they'll begin installing the new baggage belts in about that time frame. There's a little bit of flooring we've got to get done ahead of that. I think Alessandro is going to be up here next week to get that flooring in place, so we put the bag belt on top of it. And then he'll have the last bit of flooring to complete on that mural downstairs. If you didn't look at it, we've got the White Cliffs mural that kind of goes in front of the new ticket counters down through there. It's kind of 2/3 complete right now. There's another third of it that is, will go where the dust wall is now. So that will be complete in the next 60 days. The de-icing ramp last week basically was completed. We did our walkthrough with FAA on Friday. They found a few joints that popped up. Sometimes when you put that mechanical joint sealant in there, it doesn't completely set. And so a little bit of that popped up, and they'll be pulling that out and replacing that over the next couple of weeks. They've got a little bit more painting to do.
Yeah, one more coat of paint, and all the spalling and joints are complete, so.
Yep, so we should be opening that probably in about 2 weeks.
Probably.
Give that concrete a little bit more time to cure, since we don't have any real hot temperatures in the forecast, so we'll probably just let it set and strengthen up. But then for the first snow, hopefully we'll be using it, so. Dwight's custom parking spots are already painted right there where he can park his trucks. So he's got his own customized parking area. The signage program, we actually got some pictures today. Most of the signs are manufactured now down in Stevensville, and so hopefully we're going to be getting an install date, and we're going to come up here and start getting some of that stuff installed. We definitely want them to start on the exterior first, obviously, while we're still seeing some decent weather. This project includes replacing the burnt-out sign over the main part of the terminal. We're going to be adding down the deck right above us here on the 3rd floor. Great Falls International Airport kind of matched what we have on the opposite side. There'll be a big GTF coming down the cooling tower. I know some of you don't like the way it's going. It's actually going up the cooling tower, I should say.
She's wrong. Just wrong. It's a new rule.
And then we'll be replacing the 2 large blue signs in the lobby, the one over the escalator, and then the one that goes sideways actually just gets taken down. We decided we don't need that messaging. So pretty excited. We saw the clock. They've got the new sign that goes over top of the escalator. There's a steel beam that connects the 2 concrete pillars, and the sign actually hangs off of that steel beam. And in the center of that sign is a big clock, which we get a lot of requests for a clock in the building, even though every single TV in the building has a clock on it. People like to see one central clock somewhere, so we're going to have it. We can change it with the remote, I hope.
Yeah, it's gonna have a control back by the office.
Great, because if you've noticed, we have like 50 time zones in this building, even though every one of them is supposed to be automatic, so, anyway.
Is it a hand clock or a digital clock?
It's a hand clock. Yeah. Like an old timey looking kind of thing, so.
We're trying to confuse people.
Excellent. So it's useless for millennials.
Yeah. So no one will still know what time it is, but anyway. Southeast taxiway, we're paved out now. We've got to let that asphalt oxidize for a few days so they can come back and paint. So that project's pretty much complete. Laura's been working really closely with the large hangar builder. They've got an 80 by 100 they want to build. It sounds like that's kind of worked out. Are they going to try to get anything done this year yet?
They're trying.
Yeah, so we'll see.
The smaller ones are pushing the spring though.
Yeah, the smaller ones, we got delayed there with needing some soil samples and some other administrative stuff. So they'll go in the spring, but there may be some work done on the larger hangar, which is positive. Access control, the cabling is complete on that program already, and pretty amazing how quickly they did that. So we have cabling to all those doors, all those portals, bag belts, everything. And now they're starting to install some of the cameras. So over the next 60 days, that system will more or less be completely installed. So I'm pretty excited about that. We also determined that we can use our existing badges with the new badging system, so we won't have to buy a new printer. We'll be able to use the existing printer we bought about 2 years ago. Our printer, the newer one, is compatible with the ID readers. So it looks like we'll be able to save on that expense with that project, so that's really positive. RFPs, we've got a couple RFPs out there. The audit is scheduled to get proposals on the 21st, is that right?
20th.
20th, sorry.
October.
The 20th, we did delay it a little bit. A couple of the potential proposers just said they were tied up with some government audits right now, so we need a little bit more time, so we agreed to that. And then we're finishing up the RFP for some T-hangers. You may recall that we've got at the end of that southeast taxi lane, we have taxi lanes on both sides of the parcel at the top of the development there that's intended for T-hangers. And we had a couple developers we were working with over the last year or two, but with the cost of metal buildings, and now they're kind of involved in building individual hangars. We just don't have anyone ready to go, and so we want to test the market for that and put it out on the street and see if we can attract a developer in to build some T-hangers, because we are full and have been full for a number of years, so we're pretty excited to have a spot to get some T-hangers built. And so I think in the next month we should be able to get that on the street and start looking for a developer and maybe even get something done the next year. So pretty encouraging there. I think I can cover that. I think that's all I've got. Yeah, right, there's definitely more. Someone ran over the bear.
Is it damaged?
Oh, it's torn to pieces.
Is it?
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. Yeah, but luckily the person wasn't hurt badly, wasn't any serious injuries, so it'll get put back together.
I don't have any questions. Anybody? Comments, concerns?
So how do you file an insurance claim on a bear sculpture?
Same way you do any other property, it's still property damage. We'll have to get an estimate of how much it will cost to put it back together. We haven't yet contacted the artist, but that'll probably be where we start. Recall she's in New York, so yeah.
Can she do a bobcat?
Yeah, a bobcat would be so much better than a bear.
So
No.
I know some of you guys were on the board then, but we talked about it a lot. So it's the bison and the bear, because it's the Lewis and Clark story, right? Where you first encounter in the river the bison, and he shot it, and reloaded the musket, and then encounters the bear. So as you drive in, that's what you've got, is the bison and the bear.
Not about the Bobcats and the Lewis and Clark journals.
On the investment summary report, is that something that do we just put that together ourselves? Is there flexibility in what's included on this?
Yeah, oh yeah. So, yeah.
Is there a way to put, like, for the CDs, what the essentially what the maturity value is gonna be? Because we have the cost basis, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the maturity value
Yeah,
is.
I can see if you can put it on my statement. I'm just creating this off of the statement that
Gotcha.
shows our cost basis and what it's worth, the market value
Gotcha.
today.
Okay.
So I'd have to ask him to add it to our statement because
Okay.
it's not on there currently.
Okay. All
But I
right.
can ask him to do that.
Or the quantity we have, because they would
Mhm.
probably be in thousands, I would think. Just something to show what it looks like.
Cool. Item number 1, capital project, front canopy west vestibule rehabilitation budget adjustment.
Yes, so we did get bids on that project. We got 3 bidders, pretty tightly grouped, but all of them were over at engineer's estimate. That engineer's estimate goes back to 2022, before we really started seeing some of the escalation in our bids that we saw throughout 2022. So it is a little light on value. In addition, we've added a little bit more to that project with including some carpet. We're going to redo that carpet down the first floor in the baggage claim area in there. So there was a little bit more scope, but we are a little bit light on the project total. So we are asking to increase the budget of the project from 1.15 million to 1.48 million. In order to cover the full cost of the project. This will be our 2023 bill money that we're planning to use on that. We get 3 years of bill money. The first year was 2022, so this is the 2023 money, and then there'll be 2024 money out of that bill program. Nearly $2 million a year from bill. So.
And this will be done next spring at this point?
Most likely, we just got the bids. Was that Tuesday, Steve? Or
Thursday.
We just
Wednesday.
Was it Thursday? Thursday. Yeah. So it was just Thursday. So we haven't sat down with Dick Anderson to kind of figure out what their schedule would be. There's a couple long lead items they need to get going on. The cow wall, which is that plexiglass stuff, is a pretty long lead still. Some supply chain issues there, and then they need to fabricate the metal for the roofing structure because all these the 4 portals or into the building entrances, instead of having a flat roof, they're going to have a pitched roof going forward, and that pitched roof they'll be extending some fascia out so that we'll be at one elevation instead of having this funny top elevation, bottom elevation. Everything will be at one elevation, so you'll see a storefront to kind of hide that front elevation, and everything will come back at a same grade. So that'll take some time for them to get those fabricated. So I suspect they'll start some of those long lead items, get that stuff going. We've asked if there's some things they could start right away, like maybe starting to wrap the columns and that kind of thing, so we could get some of these elements done if we have a fall this year. Of course, last year, right now it's snowing. If you remember, we had to shut down construction on the terminal ramp. But the long lead items, getting them ordered and things will be what they'll do first. So I would hope in the next couple of weeks, Steve, we'll probably sit down with them and have kind of a pre-con type of meeting just to kind of get figured out what we want to do. Like all of our federally funded projects, they have a certain number of days to complete the work, and we don't want to start that clock on them until they can substantially start work. Ordering and things don't count towards that. But once they start kind of in the construction phase, they're limited on days. So we don't want to start that clock too early and then have them. They can ask for a winter shutdown if there's conditions, but typically we would want to start that clock until they can really get going with a lot of the trade working and get that kind of stuff done. So yes, I would suspect the majority of the work's not going to happen until spring.
I feel like that's all we've done this year is vote on budget increases.
Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult environment and bidding wise, and we don't have a huge number of bidders, but this one, I mean, it's not too far out of line with most of the estimates we had in that 2022 timeframe. This actually, if you remember, we were going to bid it last year, and then we didn't. We ultimately didn't do the project then. And we came back and made a few changes to it and rebid it, and then did bid it this year. So that budget estimate is fairly old. We didn't have I wouldn't even guess, maybe 20 or 30% design done at the time when we started that, with that budget estimate, so.
Questions, comments, concerns? All right, can I have a motion to increase the approved Canopy West vestibule budget to a total cost not to exceed $1.48 million?
So moved.
Got a motion? Any additional comments? And a second?
I will second it.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? The ayes have it.
One other thing I'll mention too, we haven't had the value engineering discussion with them either. There might be some ways we could reduce the cost. Like we just got bids on Thursday, so like one thing we asked for right away is what the cost of cutting in those skylights are. You may remember when you walk outside to the exterior portion of it, the architect liked the idea of having a reveal up into that cow wall ceiling. So the plan is there's kind of a deck, if you can imagine a concrete deck, and it's got supports. They're about yay wide concrete supports, 3 of them I think on the exterior section. The plan was to cut that decking out so when you went out you could actually see up into that cow wall and see the natural light and have those 3 beams across. We did look at the price of just covering that. We'd have to provide a light underneath there because it's going to be pretty dark if we don't have any, you know, the canopies underneath are going to be lit. With that cow wall there, it would reflect down at night, so you would have light coming off of the interior of that ceiling. But without without the cuts in there, it wouldn't come through. So we'd need to put a light under there, and we'd also have to provide an access panel because we had planned to maintain that area by crawling between the beams and going in, walking on this structure here. But obviously we can't do that if we don't cut the area out. That would save us about $46,000, wasn't it?
Just under 50,000.
Just under 50. So we may look at doing that because, you know, to me that doesn't add a striking visual element or really a ton to the interest of that project for 50,000. So those are the kinds of things we may look at cutting out. The contractor had proposed keeping all the carpet on the ground floor. We've talked about it before, but we intend to cut the carpet in half, probably even closer to 60% of the carpet comes out, and basically take the terrazzo and kind of dive it into the farthest west of the baggage belts. And so then we would reclaim all that terrazzo back to the original terrazzo. Now that we have that automated floor scrubber, it's just way easier to keep it clean, and that terrazzo is a lifetime product, so we don't really have to do much to it. But it would save us $26,000, $28,000 if we kept that whole area carpet and just replaced carpet. But we don't feel that's a real good value, and we'll, spend that in 10 years recarpeting that area again. And on top of that, the vacuum is this wide versus that floor scrubber, which is automatic and that wide. So keeping it clean is a lot easier. We get that is, I think, the most prevalent spill location in the building. If you go down there and look, it's, as soon as they get one spot up, we've got a brand new one. So, but we still need to do some value engineering on this, see if we can get the cost down.
All right, item number 2, accept bids for the terminal canopy project.
Yep, we got 3 bids, as you can see there, and we just need to accept those so we can move forward with awarding to the lowest bidder, which is Dick Anderson.
Simple enough. Any questions, comments, concerns on the 3 bids? So we just vote to accept the bids and then you will award it later?
Yep.
All right, simple enough. Can I get a motion to accept the 3 bids for the canopy rehabilitation?
Well, I have a question, I guess. Can I ask a question now, or does that happen after?
You got under,
No
just
better
under the
time than the
gun.
present.
Make the motion, then have discussion.
Do we have a horse in the race? I mean, do we like tobacco $300,000 more than Anderson?
Unfortunately, it's a federal funded project, so it's got to be the lowest responsive bid. If we thought they were unqualified to do the work, we could make that argument and try to throw the bid out that way. Or if they had left out some material factor, like maybe they didn't provide, what's one of the submittals on that one, Steve?
Yeah, if they left out a significant material cost and they came back and said, we omitted this from our bid.
Like maybe they forgot to price signage or something like that in there, which is kind of an immaterial part of the project, but still a material cost. Then we could say, well, that's not responsive. But in this, and I don't know if you've gone completely through them to say that they're responsive or not, Steve.
So far, everything we've seen is responsive.
Yeah, they usually, they go through the submittals page by page to make sure they've submitted everything we've asked for. That's why we're accepting the bid, is and they'll do that, and assuming everyone's got a compliant bid, then the lowest bidder would be Dick Anderson.
So even if, not in this case, but even if you had a history with a company, very happy, very successful for 10 years, and somebody just came out of left field and was a buck cheaper technically with the federal dollars, then
You're supposed to
be
award.
required.
And the reciprocal is also true, unfortunately, is I've had a few contractors that have been, have had major problems on successive projects, like 2 or 3 in a row, and we've said, well, we don't want to award that because, we don't think that they have the ability to deliver this work. And I've had it every single time come back that we had to award it. We've even had some where they've been the prime, but they've subbed 90% of the work. You're like, well, you're not even doing any of the work, it's just subs, and even still the FAA upholds the bids. It's not easy to get one cost.
If there was a significant number, say somebody came in at 500,000 in this example, and then the others were 1.3 to 1.5, and we went back to that bidder and said, your bid is extremely lower than everybody else's, and you looked through it, and they said, yes, I don't want to honor my bid, and you can let them out.
Yeah.
But
You
that's-
couldn't let them raise it up just below the other ones, but you could let them out.
Well, typically you wouldn't allow that.
Right.
You consider their bid non-responsive.
Move on, yeah.
Forgot to carry the one. Oh. Now you're
Over the years, you'll see all of that.
I move we accept Dick Anderson's bid.
We're just accepting all
All
bids.
three.
Yeah.
Except all of
For all 3. All right, I've got a motion. Any additional comments? I got a second.
I'll second.
Thomas first. All right, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the bids, say aye.
Aye.
And nay. The ayes have it. All right, item number 3, fiber permit.
Yep, our herding cats project. We're fairly close, we think, to getting some of the tenants on the same line. Again, the major problem here is we are low on space. The older area of the airport, as you pass the terminal, is pretty much impervious down the left side from the corner of kind of Adamax's hangar there when you get to the wood hangar, all the way around until you get past customs. It's more or less paved. On the other side is a fairly steep hillside that makes digging really tough too. And then our ownership kind of saw blades in and out of that area. Some places we have 30 or 40 feet. Some places it's really tight to the road in terms of our ownership. So getting a single pathway through there that provides communications technology for tenants is the goal. It's unlikely that we would be able to accommodate 4 or 5 different ones in the future, so we kind of need to get them in one corridor and have some capacity. And so what we've kind of worked out with KDS is the idea of putting basically 3 lines back along that pathway, 3 conduits. One of which we would get for free in exchange for the license. Based on FAA's guidance a few years ago, we have to charge anyone that's putting in infrastructure that doesn't directly serve us. So in the case of tenants, or if it just happens to, they're trying to reach a neighborhood on the other side of the airport, or it's passing through, we're required to charge a fee for that. And so in exchange for putting in this line, we're willing to accept a single conduit as our compensation. In that conduit, we could put in a pretty good number of fibers. So we could have potentially enough room in there for a new tenant behind FedEx and for a gate receiver where we could activate that gate with our access control system. Right now, we have no communications infrastructure that goes around the entirety of the property. So we're trying to bit by bit build a fiber line that would eventually provide security around the entire perimeter, to provide gate receivers and that type of thing. In addition, they'll put in place another spare conduit that the future competitor might be able to use. We've said that they could charge half the installation cost to that future competitor, but that would allow, if we got a new tenant next to FedEx, or let's say the U.S. Customs over there says we have to use this government contractor for our fiber, they could potentially use that single conduit to put in that particular provider. In addition, KDS in the line that they'll be using has a lot of dark fiber on there. So someone could also pay KDS to use their actual fiber pairs in order to use a different vendor, and KDS is open to that too. So if FedEx wants CenturyLink, they could go in and use these fibers to get CenturyLink. And so what we're asking to do is put this license in place for free in order to get that spare conduit that would go all the way back to FedEx, provide us that communications pathway if we decide we want to extend infrastructure back that way. And then KDS would be providing a communications pathway all the way around the back of the building, or back of the property, for all those tenants that are along that airport entry road.
Do all parties seem pleased at the moment, finally?
No. I mean, they're thinking about it. I think a lot of them, I mean, this all just hit us all at once. And so you had several people that were looking at it, all in, 6-figure estimates for everyone to have their own line. So, I mean, one of the comments that was made to me was, if you were dealing with, I'm missing the word now.
You're doing what?
People that logical. There you go. There we go. If you were dealing with logical people, then this makes complete sense. But he just said you're not. Dealing with, and that one was actually Dish, and so he's saying this is, it makes total sense. This saves everybody money. It gets it all done in one. It makes complete sense, but that's just not who you're dealing with.
Yeah, and for us, it's less about the money, or even frankly, the money savings for the tenants. I mean, they've got their own pocketbooks; they can figure that out.
Yep.
For us, it's the stray cats of the line is going every which direction, and what inevitably happens is when you're out there trying to build a roadway expansion, you're hitting every one of these lines, and so. As much as we can tell people, look, you're responsible for moving that line if we encounter it. When we're out there with the bulldozer and we hit stuff that isn't where they said it was supposed to be, then we've got problems, that are big problems. And so, when you have as-builts, they're 50% reliable, even if the guy that is putting it in place is the one doing the as-built at best. I mean, that's my experience, Rod. Maybe up here you guys are a little better off, but in my career, even an as-built drawing is about half as useful as it should be. So, just having a plethora of this infrastructure is not a great idea for us going forward, and trying to get it in one corridor and enforcing that and saying, yeah, it's not, it would be great if everyone could have their own thing, but in this case, you just can't. There isn't room, so we've done the best we can for everybody. I think that's as good as we're going to be able to do.
And Dish is one that has said, oh, okay, as Katie has said, we can do this, this, or this. They've actually said, okay, we can make that work. I mean, we started here, but we got there. So we're just kind of working through with each group.
Yeah, and I mean, their infrastructure in particular, when you went over there and looked, when they went over and painted what they wanted, we looked at it and like, oh, for heaven's sake, you're crossing the road here, you're tearing up sidewalk there. Then they were inside of a secure fence that somebody told them they couldn't even be in. And
Yeah, they didn't do any pre-planning. They put the equipment up and then called the utilities and said, I need power
And
and
they
I
had
need
conflicts
this.
every which direction. They were going under a
Yeah.
couple water lines. And it was, the whole thing was like, wow. I mean,
They
that's
just
a mess.
plumbed electricity over to a power pole that Northwestern Energy said, no, you're not gonna do that. So it was bad planning on their part, the way they did it. They
And
put
you
their
mentioned the other
equipment
day
in
that
first.
This will work for Homeland Security.
I suspect it might. I mean, you know, many of these folks, well, like FedEx, for example, has been working on this for 3 or 4 years, I think.
4 years.
You know, and so they've been trying to do something, but, you know, like anything, I mean, they're a busy corporation, they're very, you know, they're a big company, it takes them a long time to get anything done. And so they pick it up, set it down, pick it up, set it down, pick it up, set it down, and nothing gets done. You know, I suspect it's probably the same on Homeland Security. I mean, you've got somebody that's got this in their pile, and every once in a while they go through the pile and find it. And like, oh yeah, I gotta do something with that, you know, and so I think once we have this infrastructure in, and it's there, and it's more or less free, you don't have to pay $100,000 to go put it in, you just have to pay to connect to it, you know, I think it's gonna be much easier to get these people signed up. And my hope would be they would come in and do, you know, put whatever megger on the fiber that they put on it to make sure it's private, and then decide that that's gonna be, you know, okay for their use. That would be my hope. You know, whether or not they can do that or what that looks like in the government, it's hard to say. I mean, as everyone knows, security has become a massive issue, particularly as it pertains to federal agencies. And so, you know, hopefully, because, I mean, this isn't really sensitive data. I mean, it's not, you know, like top secret. I mean, it's stuff that, you know, you don't want listened to, but, you know, it's not, you know, military secrets or anything like that. Hopefully we can get them onto this system once it's in place. I don't know, Dwight, do you want to add to that?
Part of the strategy is, like John said with Federal Express, it's been years in the works and they haven't got anything done. And it's the same true with the government, Homeland Security and U.S. Customs, Port of Entry. And so all the local people want it. And they're perfectly happy with KDS.
Yeah.
But it's not their decision, it's in Washington DC, and that's where the problems are. What we're all hopeful for is that the proposal that KDS is going to present to bring that service into each of those facilities is so quick and so affordable that it will cause somebody just to say, let's get it done and sign this today. That's the strategy.
Makes sense.
And the reason we're trying to get it done is they actually plan to do it next month. You know, so potentially we could have this in place yet this quarter and have everyone have service. You know,
I mean,
other providers are much longer than that.
has anybody, I mean, has FedEx agreed to buy?
No.
FedEx has not. And
So has anybody agreed to buy?
Dish has, and then looking in the Holman Customs, Avmax area over there, then there may not be anyone past FedEx, but we would still have the fiber back there for us.
Yeah, the value to us is getting it back to that gate.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah. And
That's
Verizon
it.
has an easement back there. It's under Zayo. And so I think FedEx is looking to use that
which we had suggested that also.
particular route.
You know, when they came to us, we said, okay, you know, we can do something, but we need to coalesce everybody on the same line. Or you should contact Verizon because they also have an easement. Because that one didn't serve anyone on the airport at the time, that one actually goes from here around the airport to get to a tower in like home.
They did that because they didn't want to work down the highway because it was too expensive and red tape to work down the frontage road or the highway. So they wanted to go around us.
And so since that one wasn't going to serve anyone on the airport, we told them they had to be outside the fence. So that their line goes way out and kind of, every time the fence kind of zigs out, they had to go out and zig out. And so it goes pretty far out on the perimeter because we knew that one wasn't likely to be used by anyone else. But, I mean, here it is going to be used by someone else. So that's also a win. You know, that corridor being used is good. We want to get these consolidated in corridors.
so you want a motion for what?
so I was just trying to figure out how to.
What am I gonna say to make you happy, John?
We want to sign a license agreement with KDS. So we're asking for authorization to sign a license agreement with KDS to provide that corridor out to the FedEx gate. We also want to negotiate for the 2 empty conduits, one of which we'll own, one of which is for future, instead of being paid. As it says in the memo, it would cost us at least $100,000 to get a conduit back there to the FedEx gate. We would get about a couple thousand a year from the license agreement based on what was established as the market price for license agreements. So it's a good payback. I mean, at least, somewhere between 10 and 30, 40 years payback right there, getting that free conduit. So it's kind of twofold motion. We want to accept the value of the conduit. We also want the authorization to sign a license agreement with KDS.
All right, I think I can do this. Can I get a motion for authorization to sign a license agreement with KDS to extend fiber all the way to the FedEx building for no cost due to authority, and authorization to negotiate for 2 empty conduits extending from the terminal to FedEx in place of an annual license fee for new fiber?
Yes. I will motion that.
I've got a motion. Any additional comments?
I second it.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
That's a tough one.
You should try working with all those bots.
All right, that's the last item on the agenda. Are there any additional airport board comments?
I have one. In light of the story about John's pay raise, got quite a bit of traction of public comment, and I want to give kudos to staff that was making replies that were very professional in regards to it. Some of us did make comments and tried to keep ourselves in check in doing that, but yeah, you guys did an excellent job in sometimes heated with these keyboard warriors that have a lot of things to say that they don't know what they're saying in accusations. So the safety levy got thrown in there with that. There was all kinds of crazy stuff, and I couldn't help myself. I said to the one lady, "What in the hell are you talking about?"
And I was following that too. I appreciate you jumping in. I saw you jumped in on there. I was half expecting a room full of people today almost after.
Right?
after
You invited them to come.
And that's really the shame of it, is we don't ever get the opportunity to engage, in
It's
a
almost
productive
like,
way.
should you have a, community thing for them to come in and be oriented like they're doing with police, fire, sheriff, like go through this community process just to understand what really does happen up here and how it is separated from local government. So something to think about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For whatever reason, that seems to be one of the bigger stories the electric has
Right.
put out this year, and I don't know why that one in particular blew up the way it did.
Well, I think the economic importance of the airport is, you look at us when we lost just a couple flights, let alone, I think just people need to understand the economic impact it has.
And yeah, and I think even if you did a forum to where, it was a roundtable discussion, or you did a presentation, John, of, exactly what you guys are saying on all those comments of things, that we're not intentionally not trying to bring in good flights.
Mhm.
We know people are going elsewhere to fly out, but seriously, this is why.
What we found, we have had in the past, we've had open forums, we had a couple times we had breakfast, invited the public to come up and learn more about it. We tried we did a couple evening events. We just don't get participation of the naysayers. We get the same people.
Right.
They come to the chamber when we're at the quarterly lunch at the chamber. It ends up being the exact same people. It's easy to send your couch and complain on Facebook. I think we're probably all guilty of that in some respect. I know that, Bengals coaching staff has taken some arrows from me in the past. But, and so, I think that's a tendency. I actually do think it's productive to get on and respond to some of that. And you saw some of the commentary. One guy's like, I did go look at a flight from Seattle to LA, and I did look for a flight from LA, and you're right, it's a lot cheaper than even Bozeman. And so as people begin to understand the mechanics of that, well, why, and what I posted a number of times is, well, why is Seattle cheaper than Bozeman? Why is LA cheaper than that? It's because of the size of the airport. There are more middle seats and backs of planes, and that's really what drives the cost of that ticket is how many discounted seats they have. And when the plane fills up in Great Falls, it's been 500 seats of demand and about that amount of supply for 30 years. And so, the planes fill up at the same time all the time, and there aren't cheap seats left at the last minute because they're really good at getting our demand right because it hasn't changed in 30 years. I mean, we are tightly tailored, to what the demand is. And so, as things change in our community and it does see some growth, that's where the opportunity is. And, the summertime, and we can still potentially get more tourists to use this as a gateway, even if we're out of hotel rooms, which is one thing you're beginning to hear in Great Falls, which I think is crazy to say. Our hotel rates are half the rest of the state all summer long, and really all fall long now, and even spring. The kids play sports, that's true. And so, as we get more tourists to use us as a gateway, that's where we can attract more flights is in the summer. The biggest problem for that is, summer here is only 3 months, and we don't have a ski season like the other communities. So growing is very difficult without, any of those components really firing for us. And so, it takes more creativity. And trying to get stuff that Canadians will use is really important. And competing with Billings and even Helena on the edges of our service area, that's really important too. One of the reasons we keep the parking rates so low. So, it's bit by bit. It's not going to come to us in huge chunks like it is in the other communities, and hopefully we just get the community to understand that over time is the way to go. But you're right. Looking for some other opportunities. Maybe I could see if I could come to some of the neighborhood council meetings. That might be something people
don't
go
attend
to.
them.
They don't.
Unfortunately, they're the people that sit on the board do primarily, and you can get 2 to 6 people at those.
So
you're
probably
not
right.
reaching the audience, because those are the people that are engaged and tend to be staying up on top of what's going on in the community. But it's the ones that aren't, that are staying at home on their keyboards that are.
And a lot of people just aren't receptive to the message. They don't want to hear that.
Right.
The ones that really bother me are we don't want to be Bozeman, yet we want all the attributes of Bozeman. And that's the ones that you're just not thinking that through. There's a reason you don't have a wing coat. It's the same reason. Why would airfare be different than the number of home improvement companies? It's not going to be. They're all retail goods in the basket.
Additional comments?
I'm just curious how much, I agree with everything that Terry said in regard to the professionalism of the responses. I spent about 5 minutes on it and just said that this is ridiculous and couldn't handle it. But how much time did that chew up of staff? It looked to me to be hours to deal with that. And in my humble response, it's not worth it. I think just an auto response of like Elon Musk did with the poo emoji would have been sufficient. These idiots are, excuse my language, just not worth your valuable time to respond to keyboard warriors. I just don't think it is. I agree it was incredibly professional, but there's a reason why you're so successful and I'm not. Why I'm successful, that's all I'm sure. But I'm not in your position. I don't deal with the public.
I think I probably spent an hour and a half. It was like Saturday night, I think. I remember I was up late because I remember Tammy asking if I was coming to bed, and I'm like, nope. But, I think, so 2 things. I think community conversations about everything are productive, right? Especially in a community like ours where there isn't any growth. We've really got to, and where is that conversation happening? Nowhere. It's not happening anywhere. It has been a long time since this community really got together and thought about its future and thought about the risks, right? It's a community-wide SWOT analysis of, if your dollar is being spent 90% online now, because many of us have Geico for insurance and not any local money there. You've got an online bank that you're using, a broker online, your food now. I mean, I was driving in this morning and I heard Freshly or something, but they're claiming they're cheaper than a local grocery, and so now you're getting food delivered from out of town somewhere. When you look at the amount of your dollar that is spent here locally, it's waning. And so to keep the square footage that we have, dollars per square feet, with utilities costs, property tax, upkeep, all that, if you don't have a growing population, we can't keep these storefronts. We all see that at the mall, and, Marketplace, and Shopko's been empty for how long? And, the industrial casino, I think, has been open 2 months of the 10 years I've lived here. And so, those square footages, our community won't be able to support it. And we're going to look a lot more like Havre in 10 years than we looked like Great Falls 10 years ago, right? You're going to have a Walmart or two and a couple groceries, because we can't support the square footage. And so if we're not having that conversation as a community, then we get what comes to us. We get the Dayton, Ohio, from there. And the population in my lifetime has been cut in half. It's tragic. And so, if we're not taking that conversation on somewhere as a community, we get what we get. And so I think it is important to begin to point these things out of, look, we've missed the development cycle of Kohl's. It should have been when Shopko went out, we should have had a Kohl's. And now Kohl's is in the sunset of its lifetime where they're not expanding, they're contracting, and you've missed that entire development cycle. Same with some of these restaurants. Olive Garden's an older brand. You're not getting new Olive Gardens. We'll probably never get one. Things like that. And so, we're at Lowe's. We're probably more to a recessionary cycle than we are to an expansionary cycle. They're not opening new stores. So, we're missing, funneling down until when it comes time to get that next doctor in Great Falls, or, expand a surgical specialty into a new type of operation you're not doing, and you need to go get a whole new crew, you can't get them because the wife comes here and looks around, or the husband looks around and says, well, they don't have a place I can buy good golf clubs, and the wife says, well, they don't have a place where I can buy the kids' clothes, and then you just don't get them, and so it necks down. And now a lot of the people that are moving, you see it everywhere, into communities are people that have mobile jobs. A lot of engineers. A guy I hired in Colorado Springs to work at the airport there told me the other day that he's going back to consulting, he's going to work out of his house. Those jobs are mobile. They go where they want to go. And him and his wife are having a conversation about where they want to live next, because he works for Minneapolis Airport right now. They're going to leave there. They don't want to live there, and he wants to go somewhere else. So, so many of these jobs now are mobile, and we can get them if we're a compelling community. We can't get them if we don't have services and, the things we need to be a compelling community. So, I think, bring that back to what I did that Saturday night, I think having those conversation starters about, okay, why aren't we succeeding where you want to succeed? You want that, but you also just said you don't want to be Bozeman. You can't hold both thoughts. You've got to be open to growth, or not open to growth and willing to accept the consequences, right? And you see the gated community, they're not getting a grocery inside the gate, because they've said, this is our world, so if we're going to be that, then we have to accept that, and there's going to be consequences for it, So I think it is valuable to bring up these discussions and start the community conversation about growth, and to continue to point back to growth as a problem that's causing property tax levies and difficulty keeping the schools the way you want the schools, and not having air service, and not having kids' clothes, and all those things. Those all point back to a lack of growth.
And people's perception is reality. So if you allow those people to control the lines of communication or the airwaves of what our community is about, which is really a lot of the problem of the negative Nellies have won, it's difficult. And the one thing that stood out to me, John, that you responded to was the answer when somebody says, why are we an international airport? We don't even have international flights, do we?
And that same guy has made that comment about 4 times that I responded to. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That was fabulous. Your response was, hello, this doesn't impact you people coming to this building necessarily, but this is why it's great for the customs and for what FedEx does to get freight through our country. And so it was like, holy cow, there's a talking point that a lot of people don't even know.
And 3 or 4 customs agents who show up every day and pay their bills with a job over there. You know, and the potential to have a foreign trade zone in our community at some point in the future with local clearance. I mean, that's a big deal. And so, you know, I mean, those answers are not as linear as people would like them to be. And I think pointing out, you know, some of the nuance is important, and continue to have that growth conversation. I mean, I just do think it is relevant that we're all talking about these things in that light, because, you know, like the mall, the airport without growth in the next 10 or 15 years will struggle, because there are not enough 76-seaters or pilots to service all of these small markets. And you know, as I said when I came back from Milwaukee at the Air Service Conference, I was shocked by the number of communities that don't have the air service they had in 19. And we're fortunate, in October we have 20% seats more than we had in 19. Many of them aren't anywhere near that, you know, near back to 19. And so, you know, that will continue to neck down for the foreseeable future. The average age of the pilot continues to grow over like 15 years, I think it is, you know, towards the end of their careers. And then there's a big wall, you know. So, you know, if we can't grow, it's more likely we would lose airlines than gain airlines in our community.
Yeah. We need to find another place for that discussion other than that, to get to your point.
I mean, Great Falls historically has never been a community to have a conversation. And it's not, it's people just talking. And they don't take the time to listen. That's the problem with Great Falls. It's been that way for 60 years, 70 years.
Yeah, and yeah, I met with the new, is that thing on?
Yes.
Okay. Never mind. What surprises me is there are literally no conversations all about regional planning anywhere in the entirety of the community. You know, and then you look at, when I was in Seattle, there was actually a regional planning authority that was responsible for regional planning on top of all the municipalities which were working together, on top of the neighborhoods that were, you know, busily trying to figure out how to avoid things they didn't want. And so you have layers of it. Here we have none of it. You know, so no one is looking at how to take the Manhattan exit and connect it to Black Eagle, you know, so that you can plat another whole development cycle out that way on existing infrastructure, or trying to plat some of the dry, you know, dry grassland over here, you know, that could be expanded for future neighborhoods. I mean, there's not any effort to look at that from a planning perspective. Nobody's working on the bypass anymore either. You know, I mean, that's all just gone.
Well, in the growth policy, city and county have been kicked down the road, cans down the road. I mean, there's nothing happening, and they have bypassed the time frame legally of when they're supposed to be doing it. COVID helped them along with that, but yeah.
We've digressed.
Yes.
Any additional comments?
Bobcats are doing really well, I will tell my friends that.
No, can we scratch that?
Let's
from the
end on a
record?
happy
No.
note. Let's end on a happy
Put
note.
that down, put that in bold, so the really well part.
All right, with no additional business to come before the board, we declare this, oh, I'm sorry, you're correct.
Public.
You are correct.
The public.
Forget about the public.
I apologize.
That's all right. Easy. As you may know, last weekend, Pullman Aviation hosted the Special Olympics plane pull on Saturday. And I'd like to publicly thank the Airport Authority for your support in that. And as well, I'd like to publicly thank AdMax for providing the airplane that was used during the plane pull. It far exceeded Special Olympics expectations. There was 16 different teams of mostly law enforcement and first responders, and a few amateurs. And the first glance at the financial side of it, Special Olympics feels like they've raised over $22,000. Wow. So they're really happy with that. I think it was a wonderful event and had a lot of positive exposure for the airport. So thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, and they're going to do it again next year, so
Plan.
plan ahead.
All right, now, with No additional business to come before the board. Declare this adjourned. We'll reconvene in 5.